Lore of the Old World, Ravening Hordes, Chapter 5, The Tomb Kings of Khemri. The Tomb Kings are the true monarchs of the undead. They ruled a vast and mighty civilization at a time when other human nations were still barbarians, and now, thousands of years after their deaths, they have been awakened. Rising from their sarcophagi, the mummified Tomb Kings possess the same thirst for conquest that drove them in life. They march forth to reclaim their rightful dominion over the kingdoms of the living, and woe betide any that stand in their way. Far to the south of the Old World lies a desolate, wind-swept desert. No living thing stirs in this place, but it is far from uninhabited. This is Nehekhara, the cursed land of the dead, and the domain of the Tomb Kings. Nehekhara was once a land of magnificent architecture and noble dynasties. Its warrior kings led golden armies against the barbarian tribes that envied the splendor of their realm, fighting their wars with phalanxes of spearmen that stretched across battlefields as far as the eye could see, with regiments of archers that darkened the skies with arrows, and battalions of chariots that rumbled across the land. The Nehekharans crushed all before them in displays of martial brilliance, until their realm reached from the lizard-infested southlands to the monster-haunted forests of the north. However, the vain kings refused to let mere death cheat them of their accomplishments, or rob them of their worldly possessions. It was the belief of every Nehekharan monarch that, upon their death, they should be mummified in an elaborate ceremony and interred with a magnificent burial pyramid. Here they would await the day of awakening, when they would arise into a golden paradise, where they would reign supreme for all eternity. Over time, their necropolises outgrew the towns of the living. It is said that the honoured dead buried beneath Nehekhara outnumber those that breathe in the old world twice over, and that the dead do not rest easy. Through blasphemous necromantic magic, the entire population of Nehekhara was cursed to a living death. The corrupt sorcerer Nagash instigated a great catastrophe that at once destroyed every living thing in Nehekhara and raised the dead from their tombs. Thus the Tomb Kings arose from their sleep of oblivion, not into the golden paradise they were promised, but to discover that they had become repulsive undead creatures, bone-dry cadavers whose once palatial realms were but a shadow of their former splendour. Many Tomb Kings endeavour to reign from their necropolises as they once did, imitating the life they knew. Some among them behave as if nothing were awry, ruling as though they were still beings of flesh and blood. Perhaps some are truly unaware that they are undead, whilst others are in denial of their cursed existence, or have been driven mad by the sight of their own hideous visage. Thus a Tomb King may demand a bowl of sweet figs and a goblet of fine wine, seemingly oblivious to the fact that the contents of such a meal would spill through their desiccated bodies onto the floor. Others raged upon their awakening, discovering that their once great land had become plagued by hordes of barbaric invaders, its ancient cities and proud statuaries crumbling from long centuries of warfare, and its bountiful riches plundered by countless tomb robbers. In their immortal wrath, these Tomb Kings now fight to restore their vast empire to its former majesty, striking forth from the desert to reclaim the world from the living. The armies of Nehekhara are led by its long-dead monarchs, great kings and princes that ruled the great land through eternity. At their command are the legions of courtiers, soldiers and servants that accompanied their ruler into death. The chief and most trusted ministers of a Tomb King or prince are the Lich Priests, wizards of great power whose sole job in life was to prepare the tomb of their liege lord and ensure their lasting immortality. When one of Nehekhara's rulers died, their Lich Priests would continue to perform rituals of immortality in the mortuary temple, and now they are responsible for the reawakening of long-dead armies. Thousands upon thousands of troops were buried alive in the great pits of the kings of Nehekhara. In those days it was considered the duty of a warrior to follow their king even in death. Troops were interred in serried ranks complete with all the weapons needed to protect their lord in the next life, spears, swords, and shields. Many archers were also buried with their masters, together with a great stash of ammunition. They live again to send their flint, bronze, and iron-tipped arrows against the foe. Alongside the infantry gallop the skeleton cavalry, their spear tips glinting in the desert sun. When the lich priests and necrotecs built the great tombs of their kings, they employed legions of labourers and stonemasons to craft building blocks and statues of immense size. To move these they created bone giants from the bodies of gigantic animals, abominations that they filled with a simplistic magical life. Once the tombs were complete, any giants that remained would be cast into the brimming charnel pits, their purpose complete. When Nagash cast his terrible spell of awakening, the giants crawled faithfully from their pits, bizarre amalgams of bone and sinew with awareness to perform only the most rudimentary of tasks. To protect their masters throughout the journey to eternity, the lich priests wrought statues of guardian creatures such as the tomb scorpions, Ushabti, and necrosphinxes. These statues were fashioned from stone and precious metal, from wood, bone, and flesh. Inside each was placed certain magically potent organs, granting them a spark of life. These huge constructs were situated within the tombs of the kings to guard their sacred bodies, and the lich priests still rouse the magic within them and send them to war. Giant birds, once revered as holy creatures in ancient Nehekhara, were often mummified and placed in the tombs of the kings. Once it was said that the carrion would descend after a battle, to pluck the souls of the fallen from their bodies and carry them away to eternity. Now they are rotted and bloated husks, bound by the spells cast upon them, and serving the armies of the Tomb Kings. When the Tomb Kings awoke, they ordered the more obviously cognizant of their undead subjects to rebuild the cities of old and fill them with the carts, boats, markets, and other things that they remembered from life. As no trees grow in the land of the dead, all these things must be made from stone or bone. The same is true of their gigantic catapults constructed to bombard the armies and cities of the Tomb King's rivals. The heads of fallen foes make effective ammunition. The dry screams of living skulls can be heard as they are propelled through the air, spreading panic among the enemy ranks. The monarchs of Nehekhara are the ancient, long-dead rulers of the great land. They have been reborn to a mocking imitation of life, transformed into hideous cadavers whose kingdoms have been plundered and lost. Their mummified corpses have been awakened and revived by the rituals of the lich priests, and their bodies are now uninhabited by their undying, vengeful spirits. A monarch awakens from the sleep of death, possessing all the ambition and lust for power they had in life. Every prince or king seeks to reclaim their plundered treasures and restore their ancient glory. If this means the subjugation and destruction of foreign lands, then their great army, loyal even in death, rises from its rest at their command. Every royal herald is the personal champion and trusted bodyguard of one of Nehekhara's many rulers. Obedient to a fault, these mummified warriors cut down their lord's enemies without pause or hesitation, slicing through flesh and bone with every strike until all of their foes lie dead or dying at their feet. So devoted to their masters and so ever-present are these bodyguards, that those who would seek to harm a member of Nehekhara's nobility can be assured that they will first have to deal with their herald. Yet a royal herald had many duties in life aside from the protection of their master. Disputes between rulers of different cities would be settled by a ritual duel between their nominated champions, and the royal heralds usually fulfilled this role. Lich priests are the undying members of Nehekhara's mortuary cult, and they hold the secrets to unlife. They know the rituals needed to draw forth spirits from the realm of souls and bind them once more into corporeal bodies. It is the lich priests who rouse the Tomb Kings and their courts from their slumber and awaken their armies for war. Lich priests are also the keepers of Nehekhara's arcane lore. Through ritualistic incantations they call upon the power of ancient gods to bestow blessings upon the warriors of the Tomb Kings, infusing their ancient bows with magical energy. Similarly, lich priests cast terrible curses upon their foes, summoning vengeful desert spirits to feast on their souls. A Upon its founding, the mortuary cult was commanded to study the arts of mummification and communion with the gods. Steadily, over many centuries, the priests learned how to preserve a corpse from decay until the art of embalming had become very elaborate. The priesthood also devised a vast lore of magical incantations and rituals intended to bind the souls of the dead kings back into their royal bodies. Long ago, the Lich priests used their accumulated knowledge to trap their own souls within their bodies, extending their lives far beyond their mortal span. However, whilst their spirits never passed into the realm of souls, their bodies withered with the passing of the centuries, and it is their spirit alone that now animates their form. Necrotects were the artisans of ancient Nehekhara. They were not common labourers, but architects of extraordinary skill whose ambitions far outpaced that could be achieved in a mortal lifespan. They were the stern taskmasters who oversaw tens of thousands of Nehekharans as they toiled under the blazing sun to build the necropolis cities and craft the great constructs that guarded them. In unlife, necrotechs constantly repair their work, for many hieroglyphs have faded through the passage of time. When a tomb king awakens, the necrotechs redouble their efforts as they attempt to finish their work. They tirelessly restore the once great works of the past, and endlessly goad the skeletal legions to greater effort. Skeletal steeds display a supernatural discipline and instinctively obey the will of their riders. Only occasionally do these undead horses twitch their heads in a vestigial memory of life's surfaces. Even though their flesh has long since vanished, skeletal steeds are as powerful as they were in life, and they can crush a foe's skull with a single kick. Nehekhara was the first human civilization to breed horses as beasts of war, but it was considered undignified for those of noble birth to ride such lowly brutes. However, with the invention of the chariot, the rulers of Nehekhara could take to battle with the speed of a stallion. Thus many great kings and princes speed heroically into battle upon ornate chariots. The tomb guard are the partially mummified remains of a king's elite guard, whole regiments of which were entombed beside their rulers. Fully armed and armoured in death, their bodies were further decorated with gold bracelets, headdresses and scarab-shaped brooches that fastened parchments proclaiming their deeds of bravery and devotion. The tomb guard rest in stone sarcophagi, arranged upright around the royal tomb chamber until awakened to serve once more. They were exceptional warriors in life and maintain all their discipline and martial skill in death. In battle they form unwavering ranks of armoured warriors. They have spilled the blood of their enemies for countless centuries, and numerous armies have been dashed against their implacable shield walls. The mighty armies of Nehekhara, made up of regiment after regiment of valiant soldiers, swore oaths of eternal loyalty before the gods, to serve their monarch in life and beyond into death. Thus, the bones of those who perished in battle were interred in their king's necropolis by the Lich priests. Soldiers who yet lived after their liege lord had died marched willingly into cavernous vaults where they would be entombed alive. Bravely these warriors stood to attention in serried ranks as hot sand was poured into the tomb pits until the tops of standard poles disappeared from sight. There they remained until summoned by the incantations of the Lich priests to heed the will of their king once more. The kings of ancient Nehekhara knew the importance of delivering death from afar, and all of them maintained legions of highly disciplined archers. Loyal soldiers for all eternity, skeleton archers continued to practice their ways of war as they did in centuries long past, unleashing great clouds of death that darken the sky moments before falling amidst the ranks of the enemy. The armies of ancient Nehekhara sometimes employed lightly armoured and armoured infantry to skirmish ahead of squadrons of chariots or regiments of cavalry. Such warriors were tasked with harassing the flanks of the enemy army and slowing the advance of its cavalry and chariot regiments, all whilst fending off rival skirmishers intent on doing the same. Carved into the likenesses of the gods and goddesses of Nehekhara, Ushabti stand as guardian statues around the perimeters of the necropolises, and within the passageways of the great pyramids of the Tomb Kings. Ushabti are imposing monuments, and all who pass beneath their shadows tremble. In times of need, the Lish priests awaken the Ushabti with powerful incantations, and with the sound of cracking stone they step down from their plinths and daisies, silent and ready for war. In ancient times, the living warriors of Nehekhara took great strength from the fact that the Ushabti fought alongside them, for who could fail to be inspired by the physical representation of their gods marching into battle at their sides? The tombs and pyramids of the necropolises are infested with the dried husks of scorpions, scarabs, and countless other poisonous creatures of the desert. Though long dead, the mere presence of the Lish priests and Tomb Kings fills their empty shells with animation, and they scuttle from their hiding places around the mortuary temples and beneath the scorched sands. Repulsive carrion birds with vast wingspans once nested in the mountains east of Nehekhara. Raised into unlife by the evil enchantments of the great necromancer, their decayed bodies are drawn into battlefields where they feast on the flesh of anything they can find, from freshly slaughtered corpses to cadavers that have festered for too long in the heat of the desert sun. When the Lish priests summoned the legions of Nehekhara to rise from their sandy graves, fully formed cavalry columns stride out of the ancient pyramids and tomb pits at the head of the regiments of infantry. When the enemy is sighted, hornblowers signal the charge, and a deep unsettling discord reverberates about the desert. This otherworldly sound shakes the dust from statues, and a disquieting feeling of dread permeates across the battlefield. As one, the undead steeds gallop towards their quarry, the skeletal riders on their backs raising their tall shields and lowering their heavy spears in perfect unison. Gripped with fear, it is a brave foe indeed that does not flee before the charge of these deathless horsemen. Skeleton horse archers are the outriders and scouts of the Tomb King's army. Undead horsemen possessed of an innate ability to track and hunt their quarry through the sifting dunes and across the vast tracts of open desert at a relentless pace. Ranging ahead of the Nehekharan battle lines, they hinder the movements of the enemy and harass their flanks in fleeting yet bloody skirmishes, slowing the advance of the enemy. When skeleton horse archers attack, they strike without warning or mercy. The first an enemy soldier knows of the danger they face is when a black-fletched arrow plunges into the throat of a friend and comrade, their gurgling cry of pain a ghastly prelude of the slaughter to come. Necropolis knights are elite warriors who ride atop giant snake-shaped constructs called necroserpents, vast statues created in the image of skull vipers, blood asps, or Khemrian cobras, to guard the entranceways of the mortuary cult's temples. Tethered to their mounts by a sharp hook, held firm in one mummified hand as the other wields a heavy spear that carves through mortal flesh, Necropolis knights goad their mounts across the battlefield, blades, fangs and tails lashing out in all directions, leaving a trail of death and woe in their wake. There are few who can stand against the charge of a Necropolis knight, for necroserpents are incredibly powerful and difficult to destroy, and there are few foes equal to the task. Created by the ancient Nehekharans to protect the borders of a king's realm, most sepulchral stalkers have been swallowed by the shifting sands of the desert over the centuries and now lie hidden beneath the dunes. There they wait in ambush for intruders to pass, their horrifying snake-like forms bursting from the ground to surround their prey. The sepulchral stalkers impale their foes on ornate staves before they even realize they are under attack. However, it is not for this that the sepulchral stalkers are most feared, for those who gaze into their eyes are turned into pillars of sand, standing as still as statues themselves until a gust of wind blows them apart and scattered the grains across the desert. The pride of a Tomb King's army is their chariots. Created by skilled artisans, gilded and lacquered, and covered with symbols of the mortuary cult, in ages past the fighting quality of a king's chariots was a reflection of their own martial prowess, As such, a king permitted only the finest warriors to crew them in war. In battle their advance is heralded by clouds of dust thrown high into the air as they thunder across the sands. Moments later, squadrons of these deadly machines crest the dunes, wheels whirring as they careen towards the foe. Crashing into their enemy with bone-shattering force, wave upon wave of chariots crush bodies beneath heavy wheels as their undead crew lay about the disoriented foe. Long ago, great dragons dwelled within the mountains east of Nehekhara, and, at the height of its civilization, when rival kings warred for the crown of the great land, many were captured and bound to the will of human masters. Of these many were slain, struck down in battle, their carcasses left to wither to dust in the desert heat. But when Nagash undertook his great ritual and cast the Great Awakening, rising the undead of all the land into a shadowy unlife, the bones of these behemoths also stirred. Since that time the most powerful lich priests of Nehekhara have learned to reanimate the skeletal remains of these great worms once more, binding their desiccated forms into their service. Khemrian war sphinxes are great leonine statues, created to roam the tunnels and chambers of royal pyramids, guarding their inner sanctums of great tomb kings. In battle they wade through the ranks of their foes, crushing them underfoot as if they were nothing more than bothersome insects. They are almost impervious to harm, and their stone-hard hides protect them from all but the truest strikes. Anything less than a direct hit from a war machine is likely to glance harmlessly away. Atop each Khemrian war sphinx is an ornate howdah, in which several tomb guards ride. These elite warriors direct their mounts' actions as if it were an extension of their own mummified bodies, laying into the foes below with great double-handed spears. Tomb scorpions are powerful creations of the mortuary cult, formed from a combination of stone, metal, lacquered wood, and fused bone. Burrowing beneath the surface of the desert, they attack suddenly and without warning, exploding into the fray in a shower of sand. They are lethal foes, for a tomb scorpion's scale carries a potent sting that can incapacitate the largest enemies, and their powerful pincers can slice a man in half. Tomb scorpions are created in the likeness of the giant mythical scorpions that are said to guard the entrance to the Nehekharan underworld. These fabled creatures protect the realm of souls from the predations of dark demons who wish to feed upon the spirits of dead kings. Towering over the Tomb King's skeletal legions, mighty statues of venerated heroes and ancient kings stride to battle. These stone giants are the Necrolith Colossus, and none can stand against them. Made to resemble immense heroes of old, Necrolith Colossus stand noble and proud. Their forms are covered in skulls, bones, and mortuary ornamentation. Indeed, such was Nehekhara's obsession with death and immortality, that some Colossus have even been carved to resemble giant skeletons. Breastplates, vembrances, and sometimes great crested helmets were hammered into the stone, bodies of these constructs each lavishly decorated and engraved. Armed with traditional weapons and armour of massive scale, wielding giant swords that stand taller than a troll, a Necrolith Colossus is an extremely powerful foe. A Necrosphinx is a bizarre and horrifying construct, a strange amalgamation of the mythical beasts that inhabit the Nehekharan underworld, maintaining order amongst the honoured dead. It has the torso and face of a man, and is armed with gigantic scything blades that can sever the neck of a dragon in a single slice. From its colossal leonine body grows the tail of a scorpion, and from its back sprouts a pair of ornate falcon-like wings. A Necrosphinx glides through the air in bounding leaps, before falling amongst its terrified prey, scything down the living as mortals reap the wheat of the field. None can stand against such terrifying beings, and only when all before them have been butchered will they stop. The catapults of a Tomb King's eternal army are akin to the stone throwers of other races, but instead of flinging rocks at the foe, they throw volleys of flaming skulls. The Lich priests cast terrible curses upon these skulls, enchanting them so that they scream hideously as they are hurled through the air. These are the very death screams of the skull's former owners, the wailing shrieks and agonizing cries of vanquished enemies. Many battle-hardened warriors are driven to the edge of insanity by the blood-curdling sound. This horrific ammunition bursts into a hellish, ethereal flames when it is launched, and as the skulls arc through the air they blaze an eerie trail of green fire behind them. At the heart of every mighty Nehekaran king's tomb, inscribed with hieroglyphs of malediction, lies a casket of souls. Within this sarcophagus resides the tormented souls of those who have incited the Tomb King's wrath, and powerful binding inscriptions ensure that these souls cannot leave their prison until the moment when the casket is opened. When a casket of souls is opened, blinding light spills across the battlefield as countless souls scream into the air seeking freedom from the suffering of their confinement. These spirits plunge through the bodies of the Tomb King's enemies, the hapless victims suffering unbearable agony as their life essence is utterly drained and their own souls become ensnared by the power of the casket. In ancient Nehekara, it was the custom that when the immortal remains of a priest king were interred within their palatial mausoleum, they were accompanied by their armies for protection, by their closest family members for companionship, by their servants and retainers for comfort, and by all the wealth and riches they possessed in life as a mark of their immortal greatness. Thus the tombs and mausoleums of the necropolis cities contain wealth unimagined amongst the land of the living. Amongst this opulence can be found arcane artifacts and enchanted items beyond counting, crafted by the skilled artisans of that ancient land, and bound around with powerful magic by the priests of the mortuary cult, in the form of potent magic weapons, armor, and talismans.